The great Smokey Yunick Knurled Piston debate of 2025. Is it finally over? I think it is for me. I got some information. Uncle Tony's Garage posted a video 2 nights ago. I will put a link in the description here. The gentleman that he is friends with or knows, it actually tested the design of using a knurled piston for a race engine. Somehow he's associated with building engines for NASCAR back in the day, but NASCAR Truck Series maybe. I don't have all the information. I'm doing this out of memory, so I just want to say that. But the bottom line was, as he tells the story, he had an engine that had to be built. They had a winning race team. They were defending that title, and that engine, he didn't have a winning race team, but the race team that he was building engines for had a race team, and they were defending champs. He needed pistons for a race. The pistons that you can now order from piston manufacturer, fine-tuned to the bores and whatnot for his engine. They couldn't get those by the time that the race was, so in an effort to get the tolerances right, he knurled a set of the pistons for the engine, and they dynoed it after knurling the pistons. From the body language and everything this gentleman said, I have no reason to believe that he was making anything up, lying about anything. And I guess what I got out of it was, yes, the knurled pistons actually made more power. He explained as the pistons rocked in the bore that the angle of the piston rings to the cylinder wall were no longer perpendicular if there was any play in the skirt to cylinder wall clearance. And therefore, when he knurled it, and he had built these engines for a team and built multiples of them, that he would get consistently the same amount of horsepower with the said CFM carburetor that they were restricted to. I thought he said 390 CFM carburetors, whatever the rules or specs were. And he would build these engines consistently the same way, and they would dyno in, if I remember, this is going off memory, so, don't quote me on it. It was about 627 horsepower. Maybe it was 527, whatever it was. 27 was the horsepower that they got, whatever 100 level. And they were pretty consistent. Like every engine he put together, they put it on the dyno, and that's what it hit. Because he had to modify these pistons for this race, you got to do what you got to do, and modified these pistons by knurling them. All other things were the same. The horsepower gain at the end, he was surprised that the actual horsepower numbers when he dynoed it before it raced was 8 horsepower more. Now, whatever the percentage is, I didn't do the math. I think it's pretty minuscule, but say the least, it was the highest horsepower number that he received out of a dyno after putting this spec engine together for this NASCAR sanctioned race, whatever class it was. I'm not a big, huge NASCAR guy, especially now. I did get to go to the very last Winston Cup race back in 2003 at Miami Homestead. That was cool. Anyways, point of the story was he observed a higher horsepower rating from this race engine, with everything else being the same, with the knurled pistons. And on the flip side, at the end of the race, and he said that the engine was down some power, that when they disassembled that engine to put the correct pistons in that were machined for that engine, that the pistons rocked in the bore and all the knurls were gone. Now, granted, it was a race application running at top RPM for 200 laps or 200 miles or whatever this race was. I'm doing this all from memory, and my memory is not as good as it was. But the point being, at the end of this race, whatever the laps or mileage was, all the knurls that he put in the piston skirts at the base of the skirt, they were pretty much worn out at the end of this race. You know, we're talking living in the 8,000 RPM range as a NASCAR engine would do, or NASCAR sanctioned engine would do, whatever the case was. The knurls were not knurling anymore. So I guess it's kind of a mixed bag. But, and he did say he did not dyno the engine after the race. He only was speaking to the fact that he observed by chance, because of circumstances, that his race-built engine that they needed to have put together with the knurls and the pistons, he observed a greater horsepower range than any of the other previous built engines built with the pistons to fit the bores perfectly for a NASCAR sanctioned engine. He observed more horsepower. However, he said it was short-lived. Now, are there applications that you could utilize this in? You know, he said is, you know, if your grandfather's tractor needed, you know, pistons done and you weren't buying them, whatever the case was, yeah, there could be some, let's say, for Smokey Yunick, you're hypermiling with a hot vapor engine. Would that application work? Yes. Are the benefits going to last as long as a properly fit standard skirt piston, whatever the piston design? And his conclusion was no. It's gonna perform for so long, and as they wear down, it's going to essentially not perform like it did. So I don't know. I think that's a mixed bag. I think there are possibly applications that you could gain that benefit. I mean, but will it last a race? Probably not. So would it really be beneficial in any application? Not really sure. But Uncle Tony's Garage, he did the video. I'm going to put the link. I thought the video was excellent. His buddy, and forgive me, I forget the guy's name. I never had seen him before. He looked to be in the know with a lot of experience, and I felt his straightforward explanation of everything, I thought, was pretty unbiased. And as unbiased as it was, I think it actually spoke to every one of the points that everyone in the conversation put out there. So I want to speak to that. So there was a comment made on the previous video I did that, you know, the facts of who spoke first and who, you know, who put who on blast, it's, to me, is irrelevant. I've been a subscriber of Uncle Tony's Garage for years. I think he's a straight shooter. I think he speaks to, you know, the common man, building stuff in your garage, you know, hot rodding in its purest form. I think that if you were talking strictly between Uncle Tony's Garage and Dan Powell in Powell Machine, I think Powell Machine has a business such as Uncle Tony's Garage's buddy who spoke of the NASCAR engine. You're building top engine or top performance engines that have to last and perform at their peak for a long time. I think both can be true at the same time. I think both people can be right at the same time with different perspectives, all things considered. And then tying in the Smokey Yunick factor with the knurling pistons, you know, also speaking to that, Smokey Yunick looked for an angle, the edge at every level, and did every one of his ideas that he tried work out perfectly? No. Do I want to see Smokey Yunick get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame? Yes, I do. I think the guy was a genius. Regardless of if you didn't like what he did, if you didn't like his way of thinking, maybe you thought, you know, he cheated, because that's the two camps, right? And that's why NASCAR has kind of blocked him out of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, is because, well, he cheated. I think, as Uncle Tony described, his interpretation of the rule book in terms of, you know, if it doesn't say I can do it, even though the rules were made so that you would, one reasonably might think that you shouldn't do it. He interpreted it as the letter of the law was black and white, that if it didn't say I couldn't do it, then it means I can do it. And he always looked for those angles. So be it as it may, I think for me, I got what I wanted out of the debate. I got what I wanted out of knowing, was it fact or fiction? Now, granted, as Danny Powell had stated previously, show me the data. We didn't have any data slips on it. And but I felt from the explanation from somebody that just, he also had, as far as I could tell, enough experience in the know to say, it gave more horsepower, but it was short-lived, and therefore, if you were looking for the ultimate drag race down the strip and you were going a quarter mile at a time, could you utilize knurled pistons to get maximum performance? Sure. Would that, quarter mile blast be worth all the effort? And would everything else be considered? Would, a set of pistons that were properly fit right from the get-go last longer? Absolutely. So I think it's kind of a moot point. As Uncle Tony said, there's really no reason to take the debate further. What I would like to see out of this whole thing, this is what I'd like to see. Danny wants to get Smokey Yunick into the Hall of Fame. I think he belongs. Hashtag Smokey belongs. This is Danny Solitz. I want to see that happen. Hopefully, Danny Powell Machine, may lend his expertise in helping. I want to see Danny Powell and Powell Machine and Powell Cams have business success. I believe that everything that he's, to me, seems like a straight shooter. Regardless of who did what first, really, it's not worth the argument, in my opinion. What I did see Danny Solitz in Uncle Tony's Garage live stream the other day. It sounds like they got something that they're going to collab on, or maybe do a live stream together. I think that's awesome. I think that building friendships and building opportunities together rather than arguing with each other. I kind of take this as like I explained on the other video, me and one of my good friends getting in a debate, a heated debate, passionate debate about a subject is a good thing, and you can learn from each other. So, and to Danny Solis's point, he does a lot of machine work that are for guys like me, which would be more on a budget, right? Not when money's no object. When you're, let's say we're taking this to the aeronautics thing. When you're building the F-22 and, there's no budget limitations and you want the best of the best in every little thing, sure, go the right way. But I think, all things considered, Smokey Yunick did it his way, and he always looked for an advantage, no matter how small it is, maybe short-lived. He was always searching. It's that hunt for perfection in a different way, and I appreciate that kind of perception. I appreciate guys that are innovative like that. You may not. I can tell you that Danny Solitz and Danny Powell, if you watch some of the videos on my channel, and don't watch them, but I can tell you that you would cringe if you saw the way that I've done things and made them work. Absolutely you would. So please don't watch any of my videos. And speaking of that, I just got to 5 million views this week, which I'm very proud of. And thank you, everyone, for supporting. It's actually everyone watching that it's got me to that point, which is kind of ridiculous considering, I'm just some random dude on YouTube. So thank you, everyone, for that. I hope to get a special guest on to my live stream someday. Danny Powell, you're welcome. Danny Solitz, you're welcome. Faye Hadley, who I'd love to have on, you're always welcome. So I will link all the descriptions. Please subscribe to everyone's channel that I put in the description. And thank you again for watching. And I think this was a great debate.